Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is the Ukraine War News Update, the first part thereof for the 27th of October 2025. We're going to get straight into the hits and losses over the last 24 hours, so strap yourselves in. Okay, let's look at the Ukrainian General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. 800 personnel lost. So this is a real down tick. It could be as a result of the weather along the front lines or just a lack of activity outside of several hotspots. Pokrovsk, Kupiansk. It looks like the Ukrainians are counterattacking around Kupiansk, but they could lose a large area just to the east of Kupiansk across the Oskil River. In Pokrovsk area, the Ukrainians are trying to hold back the Russians inside the city of Pokrovsk while having some success north of there in a Bunny Ears area, pushing the Russians out to the east. But then the Russians, not wanting to be completely cut off and encircled, are trying to possibly push out of the area that they're sort of semi-encircled into Shakova to the east. And so, you know, the move of the Ukrainians is pushing the Russians to attack somewhere else. But anyway, there is a lot going on in certain places, but maybe not so much elsewhere. Now, when we look at the numbers here, 2 tanks and 3 armored combat vehicles, they're not high numbers in those categories, but then you're ticking back up to 34 artillery systems. So what that tells me is if you are losing artillery systems at a fairly decent clip, then the weather's probably okay because you're using your drones to hit further back. So it's probably not weather that is bringing the personnel numbers down, but that's just complete speculation. One piece of one multiple launch rocket system taken out as well. 138 automotive and fuel tanks, so vehicles and fuel tanks taken out there, suggests that there are still quite a lot of attacks going on with probably unarmored vehicles. Very high number of drones here. Now, I was talking to you yesterday, kind of chatting to you off the cuff about my thinking that the drone attacks have not been as numerous as Russia would like. They're still immensely numerous, but we're talking mainly 100 odd a night, and then a spike maybe once a week or once every however many days. Obviously, Russia would like to be doing 500 a night, but they're not. And so that's, you would if you could, you answer, you can't. But they are still hitting Ukraine with a lot of drones, and it has significantly ticked upwards from what it was a year ago, right? So massive problems for the Ukrainians. But then when you see a number like this, and it doesn't quite track with what took place the night before. So we had about 100 last night. We had about 100 last night. And you can see that from the figures from the most recent infographic from the Air Force, from the air defense. So we had, I can't remember, but it's going to be around about that the night before. So wow, what then explains 547 drones in a 24-hour period, because it's not explained by what's taking place overnight. And I talked about this yesterday. So these figures definitely do include attack drones used throughout the day. So the blue infographics are just overnight attacks. Huge numbers of drones are still used, Shahed drones as well. In fact, we are hearing, as an example of that, there are 15 attack drones as we speak hitting Chernihiv. So these 15 won't be included in the overnight infographic. And that kind of activity takes place quite regularly across the every single day throughout the day. For example, this was Kryvyi Rih yesterday daytime. Kryvyi Rih has been attacked by aerial bombs on 2 separate occasions this lunchtime, although those are bombs. Head of the city, Alexander Vehicle, says 1 person suffered minor injury. The last rocket was supposedly shot down, but I'm guessing at low level as debris did fall on a factory, so on and so forth. So there are just consistent attacks throughout the day that then get compiled into this number. That's a huge number. Realistically, you're thinking, given, let's say 147 overnight, averaging across last night and 2 nights ago. So in this 24-hour period, I'm guessing there are 400 other drones that are added to this list that are taking, those are drones shot down. And these are ones shot down, remember, not the ones that get through. These are the ones that are shot down. So 400 odd drones are shot down during the day. Wow. So that indicates that the Russians are doing a tremendous amount of drone work during the day. Now, that will include all sorts of drones, and there will be reconnaissance drones in there. So right across the front line, you're going to be taking out. I mean, we see montages of interceptor drones taking out just stupendous numbers of Zala, Supercan, Orlans, etc., and things like Lancets as well will be included on there. We see that regularly. So I'm just, I'm amazed at the number here, but I'm not amazed as well. It is. We are, I think, at fault if we think that those numbers and the blue infographics are the be all and end all. They clearly are not. Now, according to the president of Ukraine, Ukrainian generals have informed him that Russia lost 346,000 soldiers killed and wounded in 2025. So we are just about to enter November. That number is incredible. And if you think, the entire size of the British Armed Forces, for example, or your own nation's armed forces, apart from maybe the United States, that number, well, even if you are the United States, you lose that many people a year and you don't have a political collapse. Absolutely outstanding. Not outstanding in a good way, just it's phenomenal. It is what a phenomenon. And it also really clearly indicates the iron grip that Putin has on his population. And we're going to come back to that at the end of this video. Quote, though, and this is an important quote from Zelensky, this is almost identical to the number that it mobilized during this time. So they are doing, according to Zelensky himself, a one-to-one ratio of casualties to recruits, which means that, broadly speaking, the Russian armed forces is going to be at a kind of stasis in terms of numbers. They are losing that which they are gaining. We've had different claims about the recruitment numbers. I'm thinking that they are struggling to recruit in traditional ways, but they are probably, I don't know. I would really love to know the true numbers of Russian recruitment, how many they're getting from abroad, how many they're getting from the prisons, how many they are recruiting from the standard ways, and also from converting conscripts and reservists into contract soldiers. So lots of questions I would have. Now, going back to the front, Ukrainian journalist Sapilenko here reported that special forces of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine have been deployed to Pokrovsk as the situation is approaching a critical point there. Okay, he says the situation in Pokrovsk is becoming critical. Special forces of the GUR have been sent there. Considering the critical situation in Pokrovsk and the aim of saving the city from Russian occupation, GUR special units have already arrived in hottest defense direction. We have learned that by Budanov's order, active military intelligence units have already established interaction with the units of the armed forces of Ukraine. They've begun to carry out combat missions. The special forces of the GUR of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine are focused on counter-sabotage work and the elimination of enemy groups in Pokrovsk that managed to infiltrate the city. And then we have this so that's Pokrovsk. We're now moving on to, actually, this is in the Donetsk region near Vilna. So this is north of Pokrovsk. 3 Ukrainian assault troops, I'm going to play this actually, from the 25th Separate Assault Battalion Reese captured 7 Russian soldiers during a clearing operation near Vilna in Donetsk region. The operation was supported by precise coordination with a UAV operator who used a drone to breach a Russian shelter. We are seeing more and more examples of drones being used in, I don't know if you can call them combined arms maneuvers. Combined arms would be, using your air force together with your artillery units and your mechanized units, and then your infantry to do X, Y, and Z. It seems that drones are just embedded in all aspects of those operations, all the aspects of every single unit. And I don't think you can do modern warfare now without drones. So I was going to say that look at this is like combined arms of using infantry and drone units. We've seen drones assist in clearing out trench lines during attacks, where the drones would be both used as spotters, but also FPV drones or IED dropping drones that will help to clear out the trenches as the Ukrainians are, say, attacking only like 10 meters away from the drones. The drones are just helping in a really integrated manner the very tactical maneuvers of these troops. And this is all leading to somewhere, by the way. Here we've got a second video. Urban fighting continues in Pokrovsk as Russian forces, using numerical advantage, infiltrated and spread through the parts of the city. In 48 hours, Ukraine eliminated around 104 Russian troops and several vehicles, but fighting is hard. And the situation is very difficult. And again, here we have drones operating in concert with troops on the ground, spotting for or taking out the enemy combatants. Drones, I assume, in Pokrovsk are just flying everywhere, both sides. They'll be using FPV drones, fiber optic drones, and normal kind of radio controlled drones. But I'm sure the fiber optics is going to be draped all over Pokrovsk at the moment. Right. So this was leading to, please. Oh no, I didn't show you. Oh, I keep forgetting to change this. So this is a video as well showing the fighting in Pokrovsk with the drones doing their drone thing here. It leads on to the next video, which I put on my community post section of the YouTube channel. This is a Sky News 25-minute video, and it's an extraordinary piece of journalism. The access this guy has been given to the Freedom Unit operating in the Bunny Ears area of, the Dobropilia section, somewhere around there. I don't know if it's exactly the Bunny Ears, but somewhere around the Dobropilia sector. It's a real insight into a command center and the sorts of things they're doing a medevac of an injured soldier who they had to put on a UGV and get him out in the middle of the night as he's on the edge of death. We have a tank that goes in, gets hit, tracks come off, and you've got 3 crew members that then run out of the tank, but they don't have their radios. So then they're using drones to talk to them through loudspeakers on the drones to direct them, literally keep running, go left, go right, go in this, no, you've gone too far, come back, go in this building. And then they also use drones to blow up a position, a building where there are some Russian soldiers, and then they're just consistently hammering this building. It doesn't seem to kill the Russian soldiers, and then the Russian soldiers surrender. So then they take those Russian soldiers by telling them to follow the drones to where the other Ukrainian crew members are from the tank. And all this is being coordinated, and it's all so tense because there are Russian drones everywhere. They don't want their UGV to get hit in the middle of the night. It's got a really badly injured soldier on. They're coordinating all these different units, and all this is happening in a really short period of time. And it gives you a massively useful overview of how operations are carried out and who's doing it back in these command centers. And there's just some great footage of people's legs like tapping like this, as like everything is so on edge. And but they also got like gaming mics. It looks like a gaming setup here, right? They're just using the tech that they have to coordinate battlefield maneuvers. It's absolutely fascinating bit of reportage. This really is worth watching. And it's just a really valuable insight into how this war is being carried out and how absolutely integral how integrated drones are into all operations. So I don't know that you can, call combined arms with drones anymore, like as if they're separate, like artillery is separate from infantry, separate from the air force. Like I think drones are just used, and this is a whole conversation we are having maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, when they were talking about setting up the unmanned systems forces as a separate thing. Do you have separate drone unit or corps or whatever, or do you embed drone units and drone capabilities in every single unit up and down the front line and all over the war? And it's kind of both and. So there is the unmanned assistance forces, and then every unit has their drones as well, because they are so necessary in this war that they have to be integrated. But just honestly, if you do anything else today other than watch my video, this one, no, please go and watch the Sky News. Tank escapes, ground drone rescues, and Russian surrender on Ukraine's front line is an absolutely fascinating video to watch. Right, and well done Sky News for doing that. Okay, we've got and I'm trying to work out if this is repeating what I showed you the other day, but I'm not sure it is, because that did look like a different launcher that was hit there. So this looks like another one of these Primari videos. Ukraine's published another video of what they claim are more hits on occupiers' air defense on Crimea. 3 radars from the Nebo used. So the other day I was like, there were 2 Nebo SVUs, I think. So these large radar arrays, and an S-400 Triumph system were hit. And I am trying to work out whether this is an account of a couple of the same units being hit or not. Interesting to see that drone just follow the road then, all the cars, people driving to work or whatever, not realizing that they've got a Ukrainian drone flying above them, following them to hit something. There's also a BK-16 landing craft hit here. So this is at least this one is definitely new, and it smacks into that. And here we have, yeah, is that back at the beginning of the video again? Okay, so it could be that more Nebo radar systems have been hit. S-400 Triumph system reportedly hit. I mean, really good stuff. That needs to be happening more and more and more and more. I love watching those videos. Now, there was a video of an RST SLM Ukrainian launcher being hit that the Russians put out on the socials. German aid to Ukraine says the Russian, and he's not one that is going to sort of cover up unnecessarily through kind of hopium and copium. But he says the Russian military managed to destroy another decoy of an RST SLM launcher somewhere deep behind enemy lines in Ukraine. There are various indicators proving that this is only a decoy, just to mention 2 of them below. So he says, after the strike, which is not shown, as it would be another part of this being a decoy, you can clearly see that the cabin is made of some metal frame and plywood. What's often a real giveaway is if they don't show you the strike or cut the strike at a particular time, and then kind of show you a bit the aftermath. By not showing you the strike, it probably means that the strike, because there would have been reconnaissance footage. If you got the footage after it, you know, you have to have reconnaissance of these things in order for the missiles to be hitting, assuming it's a missile, not a drone. But also, I think for the drones as well, generally speaking, in these near-ear strikes, if they are decoys, they generally don't explode at all, like the real thing, and especially if you're expecting munitions to cook off, etc., etc. So here, German aid says clearly the cabin is metal frame and plywood. Also very visible after the strike is a tow hook at the very front, which is used to tow the decoy into place. Hence the truck shown at 20 seconds. PS, even if it was a real launcher, it's not worth 50 million, like claimed by the Russian propaganda machine. So he has a number of reasons as to why that's a decoy and not a real thing, but it might also be a real thing. I'm no expert there. Right, okay. A video here of a number of places being burnt by Atesh. Sudden fires of relay cabinets and electrical switchboards are spreading in Russia, according to RBC Ukraine. Electrical switchboards, relay cabinets, and communication towers burned in Moscow, Irkutsk, Vologda, Stolitomak, Kalachinsk, Pionersky, Zarechny, Krasnoselye, and Ramonoye, etc., etc. So representatives of the local resistance movement are setting fire to infrastructure using kerosene and other flammable liquids. This is really good news, and that is happening an awful lot by the looks of it. Long may that continue, because I think this is relatively easy to do, much lower risk. It's often out in the middle of nowhere, and yeah, it doesn't take an awful lot of resources to succeed in destroying these units. So that's, I think it's easy to do. Let's see lots more of that. Okay. And now we're going to move on to to distant strikes. Sorry, we're going to start with the infographic. We have 100 drones sent across last night, of which 66 were taken down. So that is the 8 of them are still flying. So it's difficult to know. So taking out the 8 that are still flying, that's a 72% interception rate, which is not great. It needs to be much higher than that, in all honesty. Emergency power outages have been imposed on Kiev and some other regions of Ukraine. No news of new damage overnight in the capital, with Russia's attack focused on the front line and border areas. That's the claim there. So we don't have too much information on stuff that was taken out last night or attempts last night. As mentioned, Chernihiv at the moment is being massively attacked. There are 15 Shaheds going for there. Powerful explosions have been heard in the city there. And then also, as mentioned, Kryvyi Rih was targeted yesterday, possibly by guided glide bombs that are becoming increasingly rangy. Okay, one of Ukraine's most successful new coffee chains reveals its factory in Kiev was destroyed in a ballistic missile attack the night before last. So this is a good couple of nights ago. But I just wanted to point this out because even if Russia doesn't hit an important military or military industrial complex target, they're often taking out something like this. And just think of the economic impact of this. And this is happening every day, every night across Ukraine. Like the attrition of Ukraine's economic, commercial resilience is huge. Like this is an entire business that's lost. One of Ukraine's most successful new coffee chains says its factory was destroyed in Kiev. Idealist Coffee posts on Facebook and shows inside their production center after Russian missiles hit. And you're thinking, how sad is that? Like the livelihood that these people have put, the effort they've poured into starting up a new business, and all the people they have working for them, the supply chain just completely gone. Who pays then? Like insurance? Government? Like this is a cost, a huge cost to the economy. So these strikes that Russia carry out, even when they're not hitting military industrial complexes, they are smacking up. They're costing Ukraine hugely, financially, in morale, in terms of resilience. They say Idealist Coffee, the nighttime ballistic attack by racist terrorists brought further destruction to our production facilities. The state emergency service and other services are doing everything possible to extinguish the fires and eliminate the consequences. Unfortunately, our neighbors have lost their lives and been injured. Condolences to family and friends. The real state of affairs and the timing of the restoration are currently unknown. We apologize in advance to our customers and partners for the delays and forced non-punctuality. We support and protect each other. We maintain optimism and inner strength. Let's stand up. But of course, how long must they keep having to say this? And go, it's heartbreaking. Every element of this war is heartbreaking. The loss of human life, the loss of animal life, the ecocide, the environmental devastation, the economic devastation, the financial devastation, the societal strains, and so on and so forth. And all because Vladimir Putin, as a megalomaniacal genocidal dictator, decided he wanted some more territory. It's just horrible. Right, so power went off in Kryvyi Rih last night. So we talked about the strikes that took place yesterday daytime, but then last night as well. There have been no power cuts all day in the Dnipropetrovsk region, but this time the Russian strikes. It was not the Russian strikes, actually, but Mother Nature intervening with a big lightning bolt cutting supplies, actually. So weather obviously is therefore playing a part, and that will to some extent explain some of the figures for the frontline losses. Another sickening war crime in Sumy, a drone has deliberately hit a minibus. So quite a lot of people were talking about this yesterday, with 5 passengers and a driver near Mykolaiv village. All but one of those on board, including a child, were injured. Then Russia claimed today that, I think it was today, that a minibus of their own have been hit in like Kursk or somewhere like that, and it was like, and they provide no visual evidence or anything. It's like, really? I don't think so. And I think it just shows you that they feel a bit bad, or I don't know, they're trying to control the narrative of these awful scenes and whatnot. Right, I'm going to show you this. This is just quite incredible. And I don't want to belittle other cultures in any way. I feel a bit bad, like a bit kind of from a privileged position, saying, "Oh, look at this guy walking around." But the idea that Russia is this great superpower, and there's something about the end of this video that I just find quite bizarre. I don't know what it tells me, but anyway, I'll leave it up to you to decide. This is the joke here is that, you know, this is the attempted electronic warfare from a community in Russia that's seeing a Ukrainian drone. So this is a long-range Ukrainian drone. Looks sort of like a Yeti, but without the landing gear. So maybe an FP drone. Was it the FP2? Anyway. That's different.
Пидорасы, ебан, охлянские. Ебучий рот. Облак подбили, пидорасы ебаные. Взорвите, пидорасы ебаные. Шакалы лига ебаные.
I'm left thinking, are we in the 1870s or something? It just, yeah, quite incredible. Anyway, that video is doing the rounds. And in terms of drones, so that was a Ukrainian drone though. Vilnius airport has shut down again last night. It's the fourth time in a week after Belarus weather balloon incursion. Lithuania closed 2 Belarus border points indefinitely. Officials say it's part of a hybrid attack. Last time we saw weather balloons coming from Belarus, they were carrying contraband, but I don't know what was going on last night. But you know, the impact this war is having, it's shutting down an airport costs you money, costs you lots of money. There's economic and civil traffic going through these airports, and it's not just like, oh, we're closing down the airport for the night. It's not like, oh, this road is closed, you can just drive around the other way, we're just doing a bit of roadworks here. No, this has impact. This war just has a really widespread impact. Right, okay, let's go on to Ukrainian strikes. As we've seen, they're obviously deep into Russia, because there's that one drone we saw somewhere presumably quite far back. Quite a lot of, I think, focus last night on Moscow. So the Ukrainians seem to be going for the Moscow area quite a fair bit. But there's not an awful lot of information coming out. In fact, there were claims that it was a really quite a wide-scale attack last night by the Ukrainians. Russia says it shot down 193 drones during the night. 40 were stopped in Moscow region, if you believe their data, and 47 over Bryansk. The amusing thing for me is that although they pretend the partially occupied territories are part of Russia, they never even mention them. That's an interesting point there. Now, Tim White then says Ukraine launched one of its biggest aerial attacks during the night. The best results may be in occupied parts of the country. Russians controlling Luhansk admit 2 oil depots were attacked. We're going to see some footage of one of these. Several fuel trucks and tankers were damaged, but they only released footage of damage elsewhere. Well, let's actually have a look at the damage that was done. So this is in Starobilsk. Last night, Ukrainian special forces drones hit Russian fuel supply in occupied Luhansk Oblast. The special operations forces shared a video showing nighttime Russian strikes on a Russian fuel storage in Starobilsk, northern Luhansk Oblast, and a fuel depot in Luhansk. Actually, so it shows both of them. So that's that at the end, that Luhansk one. You see a little bit more detail of the one in Starobilsk here. Let's just show that again. Here we have, what is it, 15 fuel tanks. We've had one hit there, and you can see that's already burning. Actually blows these tanks off their support structures there. Then a second one, you can see it's really going up there. And then a third drone goes in. So you've got 3 drones taking that place out. And then you've got another oil or some kind of facility that was hit again by another drone elsewhere. Okay, then smoke was visible in the village of Kommunarka in Moscow after explosions were heard and seen there. I don't quite know what was hit at this location. Explosions reported in Moscow's Kommunarka area were followed by a fire. And that's a scene from over some high rises somewhere in the Moscow region. Enemy targets were hit on both sides of the border overnight, says Tim White. In Russia's Kursk region, the governor admits Ukrainian drones attacked a substation, so another electrical substation, this time in Rilsk. But he claims there were only fires in the outbuildings there. And then Sumy, on the Ukrainian side, the large town of Konotop was hit. That often gets hammered, Konotop. This strike believed to be near an airfield there. So don't know what was hit. That's an airfield very close to Russia, so I doubt it's going to be particularly active in terms of planes and whatnot. Now, NASA's firm's fire detection system has noted multiple new hotspots near Ramenskoye, that's southeast of Moscow. These are very near the Zhukovsky airport, which had to close overnight, but some say a testing airfield was hit. I can't verify, says Tim White, that, but fires could be from debris, but I'll monitor it. So there is some firm's data to suggest some possibly successful strikes in the Moscow region there. This was actually yesterday daytime. This came out just after I did my video in the morning yesterday. A fire at or near the Serpukhov oil depot, 100 kilometers south of Moscow again. There was an air alarm in part of that Moscow region. I'm just not entirely sure the fire has lit the fuel tanks. Nonetheless, something has happened there. It seems to be a somewhat successful strike. Here's a video from the site. Something is clearly burning down on the site of the Serpukhov oil depot, but is the fuel itself on fire? Not sure, but that seems to be pretty good that they've hit oil depots near Moscow there yesterday. Okay, and then we're going to go back to, I did a sort of breaking news update on this last night, analyzed what was going on here. Ukrainians hit with HIMARS initially and then drones afterwards a dam, and I was talking about how HIMARS aren't going to do any damage really to the concrete of the dam, but what they can do and what the drones can do is damage the sluice gates and the ability for the dam to maybe generate electricity, maybe to control the water flow. So this, and I was saying, look, just be aware that 2 wrongs don't make a right. So if we were really having a go at the Russians for destroying Novokakhovka Dam and causing that ecological catastrophe, then we shouldn't have a different metric of moral evaluation for here. But it seems clear to me, and other people have pointed this out, and I said myself last night that this doesn't look like it's an attempt to destroy the whole dam, which would cause massive flooding. This looks like it's taking out the sluice gates, and only one of them at the moment, that is causing significant enough flooding to not be an ecological disaster or a human disaster and wipe out entire villages and towns and whatnot, but that it causes significant enough flooding to make crossing the river very difficult, to make like localized flooding in certain areas a problem, and therefore have an effect on the military maneuvers of the Russian forces in the general area and downstream. And it seems to have been, I'm not trying to like justify the unjustifiable here, but it seems to have been a really successful, or at least somewhat successful strike here. And they, by all accounts, there's imagery now to suggest that flooding really has caused the Russian army in the area a bit of a problem. And I think it's best summed up by one of the comments on my video about this yesterday. This is from Donny Vance, 1942, says, obviously, if you destroy the gate on the lowest outflow passage in a dam, the reservoir will drain down to that level. It may not cause a catastrophic flood, but until that gate can be rebuilt, the dam will be incapacitated for whatever functions it was meant to serve: municipal water supply, power generation, or irrigation supply. It may cause a lot of social or economic hardship, but it's not likely to cause gross human rights violations like drowning a lot of people. You could perhaps restore municipal water supply by bringing in auxiliary pumps and ad hoc uptake pipes to pick up water from whatever pool remains below the outflow pipe point, but power generation will remain impossible, and irrigation needs are unlikely to be met until the gate is replaced. I have compassion for the many poor people whose lives may be made much harder by this dam attack, but Ukraine is fighting for its life. I feel that anything they do short of directly injuring and killing civilians is justified. And by the way, I just completely agree with this comment. Also, a certain level of inescapable collateral harm is morally acceptable, because if you bomb a refinery, a supply train, a war materials production plant, etc., there will be some amount of civilian worker casualties. And if Ukraine refrained from all such actions, it would be fighting with its hands tied behind its back and without any hope of repelling the monstrous invasion. You just have to weigh the total human toll entailed in the alternatives. Just perfect. This is so well written, argued, justified. It's also true that all civilians engaged in economic activities that support the invasion, which constitute a major part of all economic activity, are a functional part of the invasion. They have to accept the fact that this makes them a legitimate military target in some of their roles. This is true of, say, hitting the military-industrial complex. You're going to have civilians working in a munitions factory, but the munitions factory is a justifiable target for any side involved in a war. This is the case in the Second World War. It's the same in this war. And Ukraine would have no hope of winning this war if it wasn't able to hit the military-industrial complex. And yes, Russia is doing that to Ukraine, of course, but again, two wrongs don't make a right. But actually, within the context of the war, that is a legitimate target. So it is not a wrong. But it's true that you will be killing. There will be collateral damage for the civilian population. It's just the nature of the beast. The root of the liability is in their own leadership, or for which they have some responsibility. When one nation attacks another, it plunges both nations into hell, physically, morally, and psychologically. Everyone on both sides needs to be doing whatever they can to eliminate the leadership that perpetrates the attack. Until that is done, then some harm to innocents cannot be avoided. I mean, that is brilliant. I want to pin that, actually, because that is such a good, a well-reasoned, it's not allowing me to do that. It's just a really well-reasoned argument there. So thank you very much for that. And I do appreciate really good comments. Oh, I was just checking to see if there was any more updated news about strikes, because they emerge at pretty much the time I'm recording every day. Turns out the Russians have lost a Ka-52 attack helicopter, so that is good, and its crew. Russian aviation-related Channel fighter bomber with another Eternal Flight Brothers message hinting towards the loss of the Ka-52 attack helicopter, the Alligator attack helicopter, and its crew there. So that's good news for the Ukrainians. Right. Moving on, two Ukrainian citizens. This is other bits and pieces. This final section. Two Ukrainian citizens, a man and a woman, were detained in Poland, suspected of working for Russian intelligence services. They allegedly monitored the routes of weapons supplies to Ukraine through Poland to Ukraine. Now, I always wonder about this. What kind of Ukrainians would do this? That surely you can't look at what Russia is doing in Ukraine and think, yeah, that's awesome. But then there are a lot of people in the occupied regions of Donbass who will be thinking this, who are pro-Russian, and some of those people do escape to, or do get out to Europe and work for the Russian Federation in espionage activities. So yeah, I do wonder about their whole moral framework, but there you go. Now, I did a video on this last night, but I didn't show you this actual video here. This is from Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who met with Kirill Dmitriev, who is a Republican congresswoman from Florida, 13th district. She is massively pro-Russian. Is trying to, well, I think is succeeding in setting up, as you can see here, unilaterally meetings with the Russian state movers and shakers, wants to set up a meeting to bridge between the Congress and the State Duma in Russia, just doing the bidding of Putin. She received flowers and a book from Kirill Dmitriev. Ugh.
Today, incredible opportunity to meet with Kirill Dmitriev, the special envoy to the President of Russia. As you know, especially with the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, it's incredibly important not just for members of Congress, but for the American people.
I've got for
in his effort.
For reasons of copyright, I'm going to stop playing that, and also because I'm going to be sick soon. I'm going to be sick. Just obsequiously talking in really positive terms and playing even that song. I hope that Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel just have a word with her and say, no, you can't use that song. Get lost. It's just sickening. And yeah, the less said about that, the better. Somebody please write her a letter, send her an email, reach out to her on Twitter and tell her no, just no. Right, US sanctions impact on Lukoil are becoming clearer. Lukoil refineries in Romania, Bulgaria and Netherlands will be sold or shut down, says Maria Drutska. Lukoil-owned Teboil in Finland had fuel deliveries suspended, and refineries in Hungary and Slovakia may see oil flows cut off entirely. Wow, so that is pretty hardcore. So I don't know what news outlet this is taken from, but here, the impact of sanctions on the industry. For Lukoil, these sanctions could be particularly painful, as the company has a significant presence in Europe and relies on international trade relations. Due to these restrictions, several European companies have already suspended cooperation with Lukoil, and several countries are demanding the sale of assets by a certain deadline. The Finnish Neste has suspended fuel supplies of the subsidiary company Lukoil to the subsidiary company Lukoil. Romania requires the sale of the Petrotel refinery by November. The Netherlands expects a quick sale of Lukoil's stake in the Zeeland plant. The Bulgarian Neftochim plant must cease operations on November the 21st if not sold. For Hungary and Slovakia in particular, the new sanctions are sparking anxieties that oil flows could be cut off entirely. If enforced, it, quote, would lead to the stopping of imports, acknowledged one Slovak official, also granted anonymity to speak freely, frankly, saying the government will most likely seek an exemption from Washington. Hungary's foreign ministry didn't respond to a request for comment. I've got it set for my geopolitical update, but there's a comeback from the US on that, which isn't looking good for Hungary and Slovakia, as in I don't think they are going to be too up for giving them exemptions, but we'll see. In fact, the impacts of the measures are already starting to be seen. Finnish energy firm Neste on Thursday suspended fuel deliveries to Lukoil subsidiary Teboil after the US and UK sanctions against the firm. So good news there. Right. Now, the Telegraph has a piece. This is coming from the Moscow Times. The Telegraph has a piece. Putin has begun to fear a coup due to the worsening economic situation. This is good news. I'm always a little bit wary about these sorts of rumors, but you're definitely going to have a higher probability of a coup now than 3.5 years ago. Every week it's getting worse economically for Putin. There will be the Siloviki around him, those elites who are going to be wanting there to be free and fair trade with the rest of the world, so they can make there are some claims that some of these oligarchs are making even more money now than they were previously, but I think generally speaking, economic prosperity is contingent upon a rules-based order, really, across the board. Otherwise, it just goes into complete dictatorial cartel and kleptocracy. But actually, that's kind of what it's been for some time. So there are arguments both ways there. But I think, broadly speaking, you can't look at Russia and think, we prefer it now to say 2010, right? It has been an inexorable slide downwards, certainly economically speaking, and I'd say socially as well. Now, Valery Gerasimov, who is supposed to be in charge of this war, but he kind of you don't see him these days, has claimed massive wins in Ukraine, says the Euromaidan press. Thousands of troops allegedly trapped, Ukrainian troops But even Russian mill bloggers say it's all fake. So they're claiming there are thousands of troops, or Gerasimov, I think, claims thousands of troops were, I think, trapped in Kupiansk. The Institute for the Study of War confirms no evidence of the victories that Moscow is talking about. Now, this is causing quite a lot of kickback. So Chris Owicki has a long thread of this. I'm not going to go through it all, but he says Russian war bloggers are angrily denouncing General Valery Gerasimov for blatantly lying to Russian President Vladimir Putin about Russia's military progress in Ukraine during a televised briefing. They note that the incident highlights a persistent problem of false military reporting. This is something we're always talking about. A few weeks ago, some observant commentators noticed that a map of the front lines seen in the background of the Russian Ministry of Defense video showed Russian positions kilometers further west than Russian or Ukrainian OSINT analysts had independently assessed them to be. Yesterday's Putin-Gerasimov meeting demonstrated that this was not just for show, but was being reported directly to the Supreme himself. Gerasimov claimed that Pokrovsk and Myrnograd were encircled, with 31 Ukrainian battalions surrounded by Russian forces. He also claimed that Russia had completed the encirclement of Kupiansk, with another 18 Ukrainian battalions trapped there, and boasted that more than 70% of Vovchansk was under Russian control. Russian war bloggers have joined Ukrainian and independent commentators in rejecting these claims. Romanov Light notes tersely, quote, once again, the information reported does not correspond to reality on the ground. Honestly, actually, I might read all of this because this is so freaking important. And this is what I've talked about so often. That Putin is making decisions based on faulty information. That's why he invaded in the first place. And that's why he continues to make these, I think, ridiculous decisions that sends thousands and thousands of Russians to their deaths, because he's being sold a lie. And it's this Vranyo situation of you're selling BS up the line, but at some point it stops being Vranyo. So Vranyo is I know that my report is BS. You know the report is BS. I know that you know the report is BS. You know that I know the report is BS. I know that you know that I know that you know. And so we've got this dance where I'm handing you this. Look, this is what we've done. This is what we've taken. And you go, yep, okay, brilliant. And then because you want to sell that to your commander, so that BS passes up the line. So that's Vranyo, this kind of BS dance that the Russians are so good at doing. But at some point, someone goes, this is actually what's happening. Now, is that the move from Gerasimov to Putin? Is it the move from just below Gerasimov to Gerasimov? You know, at some point, when does this get believed? Or is it much further down, or is it a mixture of everything? And actually, you don't really know in the end what is actually true and what isn't. But this has been going on for so long, and yet yet you are seeing maps in at the top of the command that indicate that they are not receiving accurate information. So important. I might just do a separate video on this. In fact, yeah, I'll leave that for a separate video because I think it's worth going through this. But the point is that Gerasimov is getting a lot of pushback from his own sort of military bloggers and whatnot. Why would he confuse concepts in front of the Supreme Commander? I even had the guilty thought that due to significant changes in tactics and operational arts, the concepts of encirclement and isolation could have been conflated due to a change in the concept of line of combat contact, which should now be called zone of combat contact. However, there's another explanation. It's possible that in this conversation with Trump, our president promised operational and tactical problems for Ukraine in the near future, and now they've been voiced. Right. Take that last point to this then. So hopefully this all makes sense. Putin, this is Zelensky saying, Putin secretly boasted to allies about occupying Donbass by October the 15th. Putin would be believing that. Putin's not lying there. I genuinely think that if Putin had been showing off about how they were going to take the Donbass by October the 15th, he genuinely believed it, because otherwise he's got egg on his face and he's not going to welcome that. Quote, Russia cannot do this. It does not have enough people. Its strong battalions have been destroyed. Today on the battlefield, we mostly remain where we have been for the past 2 to 3 months. So you might lose Pokrovsk, right? You might lose Kupiansk, but like those will not entail the absolute surrounding of all of those tens of units and the death of thousands upon thousands of Ukrainian troops. But actually, vice versa, in order to take those towns, the Russians will necessarily lose ridiculous numbers of people. So the analyst then goes on to say, not if, but when. Russian claims from the top that they have taken far more land than they have actually taken are incensing Russian mill bloggers. Both Putin, likely because Gerasimov told him, and Gerasimov himself have been grotesquely overstating how much land they're capturing. The mill bloggers consider this detrimental both to in the reality of the front lines and morale at home when the reality becomes clear. And he goes on to talk more about that. I'm going to save that for a further video. I think that'll be my next video. So, you know, the Russians are not in a position that the top of the command think they are in. And then that sort of transfers into these negotiations that have been ongoing. So I think what might underwrite some of the failures to successfully negotiate is that Trump had the same kind of maps from the Russians, which Zelensky, remember, went into the White House and said, well, these maps are wrong. And Trump was probably believing Putin and saying, well, look, Putin's on the edge of taking control of here and here and here. So actually, because I always want to back a winner, that's why I'm going to back Putin in these negotiations and not Zelensky. Then that didn't come about, and it didn't come about. It's like 2 weeks. Yeah, they're going to get it. They're going to get it. Putin's going to do this. Putin's going to win this. They're going to get it. Oh, no, 2 weeks. And it never happens. And so at some point, the rubber hits the road, right? And Trump goes, oh, Putin must be lying then. Yeah, Zelensky goes, yeah, he's lying. Here are the proper maps. This is reality. And then you had this road to Damascus moment where Trump goes, oh, actually, it turns out that the Russian economy sucks and that Ukraine could win if we actually pile loads of support into Ukraine. But then he gets, then he talks to Putin again and whatever. But there is this issue of the top of the command in Russia don't have a proper handle on what's going on the battlefield, which means that if the top of the command in the United States are getting some of their information, or maybe most of their information, from the Russians themselves, then they don't know what's going on, at least in the administration, although the Pentagon does down here. But they're failing, and I've said this so many times, that they're failing to get their narrative through to the White House. The White House is getting its narrative from Russia. Russia's getting its narrative from faulty information coming up the chain. And you just have a complete shit show going on with regard to negotiations. What you need, like garbage in, garbage out, you need decent information to make decent decisions. And simply speaking, the Trump administration does not have decent information, and the Kremlin does not have decent information. And Zelensky does have fairly decent information, and he's having Syrskyi go around the front line saying, if you give, like I reported yesterday, Syrskyi, commander-in-chief, is going to his commander and saying, if you give me false information about what's going on the front lines, then, on your head be it. So you've got this desire to make sure that truth is being spread throughout the Ukrainians, because that it will never end well if you are inflating your successes or covering up your failures. It will never end well. The truth is the most important, aspect for intelligence and therefore good decision making. So then let's go across to Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov, who said, in Alaska, Putin said he is ready to cooperate on the basis of the concept and the framework that the envoy of President Trump brought to Moscow, and which they continue to discuss in Alaska. President Putin repeated each and every element of the concept which was brought by Stephen Witkoff and asked Witkoff, who was present in the discussions in Anchorage, is that right? Is that right? Everything was confirmed. Then Putin said that we are ready to accept your concept, and that's how we believe we can move in specific terms on the basis of what you proposed. Then there was no direct response. Okay, translation to this, because it's a bit kind of messed up. It could be through the translation. But as Max25, because he initially thought, basically, that Lavrov was saying that they were ready to accept the US concept on Ukraine. What was really going on, what Lavrov, I think, has been saying, is that we were ready to accept the kind of ceasefire or the negotiations as proposed by Steve Witkoff that we talked about in Alaska, but then we haven't heard back from the US about this. But of course, what Steve Witkoff was proposing is what they proposed to Steve Witkoff. Because Steve Witkoff had been in Russia all these times and then had regurgitated out into the public what Putin had told to him. And And that's what Steve Witkoff keeps taking in. And this happened again in the White House recently. Well, Steve Witkoff wanted this to happen, and Trump reiterated that. And Zelensky went, no, that's never going to happen. So Steve Witkoff is basically the Russian lackey, for want of a better word, that is saying, hey, you guys, I think we should do this bunch of stuff. And that's exactly what the Russians told you to say. So when Lavrov says, hey, we were happy to do what Steve Witkoff stated and proposed, that's actually what that he might as well have said, hey, we're happy to do what we proposed. Well, yeah, that's never going to work because you're not conceding anything. And these are just your root causes and Russian speakers and blah, 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 blah. It's just Russian propaganda. So anyway, it's interesting that's been going on. Lavrov's also said that it's not honest that everyone asks Russia when it's going to have a ceasefire and end the war. One more time, representative of the aggressor country talks about unfairness, says Anton Gerashenko. Quote, an honest discussion would be to tell Ukrainians before anything else to restore the language rights, restore all national and minority rights because your constitution says so. He said, the only honest discussion must be about Russia leaving Ukrainian territory now, says Gerashenko. So Lavrov just spouting his normal BS. So Zelensky told Axios that Trump's new sanctions will hurt the Russian war machine, but Ukraine still needs long-range missiles to force Putin to make peace. Quote, if Putin doesn't stop, we need something to stop him. Sanctions is one such weapon, but we need long-range missiles as well. Yep, totally agree with that position completely. Zelensky has also said that a ceasefire plan is to be prepared in 7 to 10 days, but Putin is unlikely to accept it. Quote, a few short points, he said, adding that he was skeptical that Putin would be ready to accept any new peace plan. And then finally, here we have, news that, as Tim White says, good grief, the depopulation crisis is so bad in Russia, one region is now paying schoolgirls and students to get pregnant. The Tula Regional Ministry of Labour and Social Protection has announced a one-off payment of 150,000 rubles, 1,625 euros, for young women to get pregnant. Oh dear, that's how desperate it is. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hopefully that was of use. It was a long one, lots going on. Hope you don't mind me packing these full of almost an hour's worth of information. Sorry, it is a little long. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.